To welcome everybody, thank you for joining our webinar today with ZenOptics. My name is Vodafone Francois. I'm the Head of Professional Services at RIC Consulting, and it is my great pleasure today to welcome Hina. Hina is from ZenOptics. She is the co-founder of ZenOptics, and she is responsible for the strategy and the delivery of focused experience for BI and data initiatives related to ZenOptics as a product, and that is why she's the VP Product Manager for ZenOptics, and we are very excited to see what she's going to be telling us about the product as well as the product demonstration. And just some logistical items, as I said before, this session is being recorded. You're welcome to post some questions in the chat window, and we will cover those during the Q&A session or during the session as we have capacity. And I am going to hand over now to Hina to take this further.
Oh, well, I was on mute. So, well, good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me fine?
Yes.
All right. Well, yes, I'm excited to be here. And thank you, Woodrow, for that introduction. I am going to share my screen and, just step you through a couple of slides that will help introduce ZenOptics, as the product, the platform, providing some context and background into kind of the evolution of how we came about, so that, as we kind of enter the demonstration, you have, some appreciation for the problem statement that we're trying to address. Can everyone see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, yes. Perfect. So, just from a context perspective, our goal really with ZenOptics is truly what it says here on the first slide, is to really liberate the BI insights, for smarter business decisions. And this all stems from, something that I think everybody on this call is probably well aware that, every company wants to be data driven, right? Data, BI and analytics, governance are such widely used and synonymously used terms, and everyone's trying to really drive towards that, especially in the current times, right? So while that is true, and while everyone really wants to be data driven, the reality is really that only 1 out of 5 people truly use analytics, and the overall adoption of BI is still not what, we would think it is or we would want it to be. And there's a couple of reasons for that, right? And so this slide tries to address, the problem as we see it. And I think most of you are probably very well aware of the fact that most enterprises, if not all, ranging from small to medium to large, have at least 4 to 7 different BI and analytics platforms, a whole host of business applications, and legacy tools. And then obviously Excel is prevalent everywhere. So if you look at the visual, right, and you think of kind of the conundrum an analyst has to go through to be able to navigate this environment, there's a ton of problems, right? There's loss of productivity, people are duplicating reports, using, the incorrect report to make a critical business decision, or looking at some, unapproved metadata that really invalidates the analysis, and what does that do, right? And what problems does this create? If you think about it from a productivity standpoint, your typical analyst is spending about 1.8 hours a day just searching for reports. And, managers or line workers or people who are responsible for just, managing certain activities are spending about 3 hours a day executing routine tasks. And as a result of this, 1 out of 5 people are basically just looking for information. Obviously a huge productivity loss, equating to about 25 million a year. In addition to that, we're creating duplicate content, right? self-service BI that really disrupted the BI space, almost a decade ago now, really has kind of, amplified this problem and kind of, put these tools into the user's hands. But there was a need for it, right? And it's not that there was no need for it, but if that goes ungoverned and we don't have any sort of control or visibility around it, there is a huge amount of duplication of content, and that in itself leads to losses in the magnitude of at least $5 million a year, and ultimately non-compliance, right? And there's huge cost implications of that as well. Now, our goal, right, is to really support and provide a way to manage the disruption that self-service BI brought to the BI and analytics ecosystem. And, the way we do this is through the ZenOptics platform, the analytics composition platform or the information platform that really manages this information layer. And the information layer is mostly made up of, analytics, reports, dashboards, insights, storytelling content, or a whole host of these, including documents like Excel and PowerPoint and PDF and various other forms. And so the goal really is, with ZenOptics, from what we're trying to solve and provide, is a platform that allows that productivity increase, allows the end-to-end data transparency, and brings overall efficiency to this this ecosystem. And why are we here? I mean, this is really, I think all of you probably relate to this problem. You understand it, you're probably dealing with it, but there has been a lot of awareness recently over the last year or so on the fact that this is really a trending space. Gartner is really seeing it on the hype cycle trending upwards, and you can see the analytics catalog is right here. We've been called out, and we work with many analysts, but also have got some accolades across the industry in terms of just really driving this trend through education, through governance, and just overall bringing this problem to light, but also providing the solution for it, right? And really trying to see how we can help enable organizations and enterprises to really leverage self-service BI, but govern it, really govern that information layer. So how does ZenOptics work? I'm sure all of you are wondering, how do we do this? It's really simple, actually. It's almost a three-tiered sort of architecture in context of the logical flow of how it is managed. At the very base level, we have a whole host of custom smart connectors that span across BI tools, data platforms, as well as applications, right? And we talked about how information is spread across all of these layers. Now, the smart connectors, are obviously critical because that's where we provide or use that layer to provide this single unified interface by bringing in not just the catalog of the information assets, which could be the reports and the dashboards, but also the metadata that really helps you understand what that information asset is all about. And we inherit the security and the permissions, right? We're not asking anyone to create another layer of security, because the goal really is to leverage what has been created in the source system and really drive that single source of truth across the environment. Now, there are three constituents for ZenOptics, but really our goal is to enable the business user. And enabling the business user ultimately leads to efficiencies around the other aspects, and enables other sort of personas or constituents to really manage the environment. But the goal really is that for the business user, how do we increase productivity by allowing them to discover content, collaborate on content, find their content through pre-navigated workflows or categories, allow them to bookmark favorite content or subscribe to assets, or be recommended and kind of interact with a Netflix-like experience in terms of being able to access the information. And then from a BI steward perspective, really enabling, some governance and a way for someone as a BI steward to really manage the BI glossary, certify the content, really look into how to avoid redundant and duplicate reports through the management of the content, and ultimately support IT management in understanding, report usage, impact analysis, and, providing this unified platform that allows people to kind of, really interact with each other in a more collaborative way, truly liberating those BI silos, right? And eliminating the shadow IT organization, so to speak. So why do business users love ZenOptics, right? And I think it's pretty apparent, but, it's just reiterating the fact that they love ZenOptics because it's incredibly easy to use, and you'll see that in the demonstration. You can, I've had customers tell me that all they do is just go to the search and that's all they do, right? They just look for their reports, they find it, bookmark it, and they use it. Whether it's coming from ClickView, ClickSense, Cognos, MicroStrategy, it really doesn't matter. And on top of that, it's not just about finding the content, it's also about, making sure that they have trust in this content, right? And so they feel empowered in the sense that they're really looking at certified and governed content, and they can get their content when they need it without having to wait on or rely on data analysts or IT for every single report request, which, potentially leads to a wait time of 4 to 6 weeks for a new report to be created. So it's really truly driving that self-service experience based on, all the information that's existing. And then why do BI and IT professionals love ZenOptics? Going back to some of the things I discussed earlier, report governance, eliminating, first of all, understanding your full inventory of reports, and then taking that to really identify and prune out content that really isn't being used, reducing those duplicate and redundant reports, ultimately reducing your overall total cost of ownership and providing that centralized control and visibility. So I think we're going to shift over into the demo, but as I do that, I wanted to just pause and see if there were any questions as I bring up the environment. Just to preserve some bandwidth, I will go off of video. All right, let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to take on the persona of a, sorry, give me a second. Okay, I'm going to take on the persona of a expert user, but, really walking you through someone who is really playing the role of a, let's say, a finance systems expert user. Coming into this environment, I am, presented with what we call our landing page. And here I have content that's organized in a very clean, simple sort of structure, organized by, my favorites, which I can access, by clicking on any one of these. So I'm going to just launch this report right here. We provide a thumbnail view for all the content. We're providing thumbnails for most of the BI tools now through an automated generation process, but launching the report as easy as clicking it as a user. And now I'm in a ClickSense report right from here. But I'm going to go back to my dashboard for a second and just walk through some of these sections. The the focus here is, while I can access my favorites, how do I get to the other information as easily? I have my reports organized here with recently viewed as well as my reports. My activity telling me kind of how I've been really using the environment. What's new is, an indication of new content that is available to the user as a result of that being promoted and made available in the environment. It's a very easy to set up configuration based on a time span, and allows the administrators and or the business owners to really promote new content, making it very easily identifiable to the users. And again, this whole dashboard is really based on my access that I inherited when I logged in, and you're only being able to see information that you have access to. At the bottom here is our quick access section, and this is again configurable to include all 3 or 1 or 2 of these elements. But really the goal is to provide, to use the ZenOptics platform to really drive a BI center of excellence or BI competency center sort of framework where you are able to, promote announcements, quick links that could be to internal or external content, as well as competency center to really promote tutorials or training materials that would help enable your overall analytics and information workers. Now, the 2 components here, the categories and the workflows, is what I'm going to spend more time on, but at a very high level, if you think of categories, these are predefined groups of reports, by various dimensions. It could be by business units, it could be by functional area or by geographies or a combination of those. And as a complement to that, workflows are really task-oriented, or business process-oriented groupings of reports that allow you to really streamline, certify, and promote business processes, that are truly dependent on analytics in a more automated manner. So users can really access this content with a single click and not have to worry about or think about where to go to get it. So this is the dashboard, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, walk you through, the categories and the workflows in more detail. But just before I do that, what I wanted to show you was, this view, what we call is a very siloed view in context of the content being organized by the BI tool, so to speak. And I can see content here across multiple systems, multiple tools. There's BI content, there is database views, there is document repositories that I have connected in here. So really, truly an information platform that consolidates, content across this information layer. And if I really wanted to get into any one of these, here I have Tableau and I have 2 systems connected. I can get into any one of these, and obviously a visual speaks 1,000 words, so I can look at a thumbnail view to really understand more about what each of these reports is. But now I'm going to focus in on the categories like I was talking about, and I'm going to take an example of a recent discussion or a demo we had with one of our customers here in North America, who have their businesses spread across the world globally, but as far as their focus in North America goes, we really broke out 2 levels, finance and supply chain. And the focus really is, if I was a finance user, which is the person I'm playing right now, or I'm kind of walking you through, I just followed this path and, got to all the content that I need to access, kind of predefined, curated for me, so I don't have to go search for it across multiple systems. These could be URLs, these could be obviously Qlik Sense reports or Qlik View content or Power BI content. It really does not matter. I guess the advantage of this view is that you're really driving the user to the content in the most effective manner if they know that they really want to get to managing life sciences and looking at finance information to do that. Again, if I am a finance user that, let's say, does not have access to Cognos, I will not see this report in here automatically. I don't need to do anything to set that up in addition to just running my connectors, because the connectors already inherit the security from the BI reporting tools. And that is what is used to define the views of information or the categories that a user sees. Now, complementary to that is the workflows piece. And from a user perspective, if I think of someone who's really using reports and analytics to drive and make decisions on a daily basis, or to really, support their role in a more, we talked about how there are people that need to do routine tasks, right? So if I had to really look at a daily operations workflow, that could be a set of reports that I need to run on a daily basis, right? And obviously this is a large workflow with 23 reports. But if I took another example of a month-end close workflow, and that is a very structured business process, defined from a finance governance perspective, I can now say that this month-end close workflow, which really should be used to execute the process or to support the process, is a shareable workflow that me as a business owner created and shared with all my counterparts in finance to really leverage. And it includes content across Tableau, Power BI, SharePoint, and a host of other systems and tools that I really need to access to be able to process the period end or the period closing. Executing this workflow is as simple as me launching it, directly from there with a single click operation. And, we allow you to obviously look at it from a tabbed view on the top, but you can also move that down if you're really, familiar with Excel and you like this kind of a navigation. But I'm going to move it back up just because I like it, here, and I can access it directly. But, it really doesn't matter now which report or which system, each of these information assets is coming from, right? This happens to be a Tableau report. This is a Power BI report. This is an Excel SharePoint document that I can access directly from ZenOptics, embedded within my workflow. I can now look at a sales order detail view or a business objects report. This is a link to an external website, foreign exchange translation website that I, need to access. And again, goes on to include a whole bunch of other content. So the execution is a very simple process, obviously, like I showed you. And, we went through kind of just a single click process to execute and launch the workflow. But that's just one portion of it, right? And I've already probably addressed the productivity issue here because, I'm allowing the users to really get to their information quickly, but I'm also making them a better user by informing them about this report. And how do we do that, right? We do that through metadata, and metadata split across header level metadata, information about the report. What is this report? What is the description of it? Where does it come from? We have, the capability to add in some ZenOptics attributes to really enhance that metadata. So you can certify a report by putting together a set of certification guidelines. You can define this as you wish. And, a BI steward or a BI admin can easily certify the report, and it'll tell you that, yes, this has been certified. I can identify a business owner, add in a description, because a lot of times we find that the BI tools, for whatever reason, either don't have the descriptions maintained for current updates, or they are, lacking descriptions completely. And so, you're able to now come in and enhance this information. So you're really making that user a smart user, not just someone who's running a balance sheet forecast report. And then what we do is we also enhance that experience through the metadata aspect. And this is what we call a connected BI dictionary experience. that allows the user to interact with the content and the report at the field level, knowing, okay, this is, the set of fields that make up this report, and they're all approved. And this is what, this is a process that the BI steward goes through to really certify this content. But you can go into any one of these here, and I'm going to just pick one of these and kind of show you the dictionary, but this is where the BI steward would maintain some of this information. Now, going through this, I'm just going to walk you through a couple of other examples. This is a Tableau report. We bring in the data source information as well as the metadata. Obviously, you can see here in this example, the BI steward has not really approved the rest of these fields here, but for good reason approved and certified the report, right? Because it is part of this month-end close workflow. Similarly here, this is a Power BI dashboard. And I can look here, all the metadata has been approved. This is a business objects report. And again, I can tell you what source it is coming from. I can tell you what the metadata is. And then, from a collaboration standpoint, the users are really enabled to use either public comments or private comments. And then as far as related reports, we're investing very heavily from a roadmap perspective on really building out our recommendation engine so that we're driving the consumption based on the usage patterns as well as, recommendation patterns driven off of content matches across metadata, as well as just, similarity matches, right? And so in this case, I'm looking at a set of reports that are similar or related, but not always will you be able to just match it all up, and you may want to really identify some content that you want to link to, and we allow you to do that by adding in manual links to reports and/or transactions. And very simply, now I can access an SAP ERP application directly from here. So I was in my workflow, I was running my reports for month-end close. And as part of that process, I need to go look at my contribution, net sales contribution in my ERP application. I just launched that right here, right? And I can now access this GL account balances right from within my ZenOptics platform. So coming back to this, ability to, if you remember kind of the issues with the users not knowing or having to kind of span across this content across multiple systems, not really knowing what was the valid content or approved metadata, that problem is completely alleviated now with us being able to really govern, how business owners can really consolidate the analytics content that supports these business processes and provide them as governed workflows. So I think what I'm just looking for a quick time check. Okay, we're doing okay. So I'm going to take you through the discovery process, right? And we talked about how, business users really sometimes don't know what exists, and, there is a, potentially a long wait time, and then, sometimes they're waiting, but, there's also the potential of creating a duplicate. So I'm going to use a very simple search term of sales. And as I'm in my month-end close process, I really need to look at some sales numbers. So I get a view of, all my sales reports that I have access to. But what you can really do now is look at all reports in the enterprise that match that keyword. And I find this report that talks about a sales comparison, and it is a highly rated report. It is certified. If I look at the information, I know who the business owner is. I can understand that, this report is going to help me compare this year's sales with last year's sales. And so this is really the one I want, but I don't have access to this. So I can, look at this by clicking at it. I get instant visibility in the header level metadata and the detail level metadata about this report. What are the fields here? Who's the business owner? What's the description? And yes, if this is really the report I want, I can request for access. So we have out-of-the-box integration to, to send out emails, but we also integrate with IT service management platforms such as ServiceNow, Zendesk, to really automate that service request process and kind of allow the user to discover and request for access without, waiting for the 4 to 6 week process for a new report. And I've also now really enabled IT to really focus on other more important stuff rather than creating a report that probably already existed, right? And so I've also eliminated the possibility of a duplicate report being created. So a couple of other things on the report side here that I just want to go over quickly. Obviously, you can favorite the report. This is a favorite report, so I can unfavorite it from here. I can send an email. I can subscribe. If I really wanted to interact with the tool directly, I can launch this in a new window, and then I'm really using or within business objects, right, to manage the business objects content. But if I now wanted to look at 2 reports side by side or 4 reports side by side and compare them, it's as easy as launching the multi-view, and we've called it multi-view because it really is that, where I can look at a balance sheet forecast report, let's say as an example, with my net sales versus contribution margin. And I will go back to this view here. I'm going to just minimize this. So I have some more real estate. And now I am looking at my balance sheet forecast Qlik Sense report alongside my business objects net sales versus contribution margin report, right? And I can compare the metadata, right? So I know Nick's really the business owner for both of these. I can look at, the fields, and I can understand, what the overlap is or what these 2 reports are really doing. Multiple use cases around this, migrations, data validation, just people wanting to track their dashboards and, view information side by side. But again, ability to really have it all in one place, irrespective of where the tool resides or where the report resides, is very powerful. So I'm going to shift a little bit into, talking about some of the governance features that are enabled through the metadata, really. And one of the biggest ones is the glossary. The BI glossary is really, the consolidation or the grouping of all the BI terms and definitions that have been certified or approved by a BI steward through the BI dictionary. And here I'm looking at revenue as an example. It is an approved metric, let's say in this case, that was approved by HINA, published, into the glossary on the 6th, but changed on the 22nd. I probably updated the description here. But now I can see all the reports that are using this field, right? And it really won't matter, where the report is coming from. There's Tableau, there's Power BI, there's Qlik Sense, there's Cognos. I can tell which ones are certified. I can tell how popular each one of these are. And I can launch any one of these. Accounts receivable report directly from here, right? And I can go into this and get more information about it. So again, the ability to provide the overall experience in terms of informing the user and making them truly smart users by kind of putting together not just the ability to run a report from multiple systems, but really helping them understand, the BI glossary. And again, what we've seen is that when you take a top-down view to really consolidating your BI metadata, you really help inform your data governance strategy in a much more significant manner than you would if you were to just do a data governance strategy. Because now you're really able to focus in on terms and definitions that are being used and look at those reports that leverage those terms and definitions, right? And really look through kind of, how are they being viewed? Are they certified? Do I really focus in on, managing this term so that it's really consolidated across multiple reports and governed across multiple reports. And last but not the least, I want to kind of, come to the IT persona, the IT management sort of persona, where we talked about how, IT is empowered now through ZenOptics to really measure and manage the environment in context of, the full inventory of content by source versus the usage of that information. So when I look at this graph, it tells me a couple of things. I can tell that MicroStrategy is my number one system in terms of both content as well as usage, but the rest of the graph tells me a completely different story where, I have a lot of content in BW and business objects, but really my adoption that I'm seeing in terms of usage is on Tableau and Power BI and Qlik Sense. And then I can compare that to looking at the reports by source, looking at information by users to really see who is driving some of that adoption, who are the trailblazers out there who are really influencing the user community, right, based on their usage patterns. And then I can come in and check, reports that have never been accessed. This is, if I go into this one, it's a new environment, and so I don't have, usage in the last in the more recent months, or lack of usage rather in the last few months. But if I go in and click on any one of these bars, I will be able to look at content across multiple systems that have never been accessed. And I can obviously sort this by source. I can understand, obviously the view count will be 0. Here are my users that have access to it, and here are the users that are using it, right? So I can download this to Excel and then take action. Very powerful in terms of being able to really understand and prune that content. And if you've really launched new reports and spent time in building these new reports or new content, but no one's really using it, it really now enables you with a tool to go have a conversation about, why the usage is not there. Why is the adoption not there, really? Any one of these bars is clickable to kind of get into details. In this particular case, if I'm looking at Tableau, I can see that, yes, these Tableau reports have great usage. I can kind of sort by the view, look at the users that have access to it, as well as the users that are really using it. Now, if I take the report statistics and I translate that into a total cost of ownership dashboard, the power of this is, the ability to really match up your usage against your license spend to really inform you on certain cost savings opportunities that you can kind of decide how to take advantage of. It's a very simple thing to set up based on, some upfront information on your license spend, which we then compare to usage and kind of propose some savings opportunities. Now, this could mean that you don't need to go procure additional licenses for these tools. It could also mean that you could renegotiate these licensing contracts or these user license contracts, but ultimately, you now know where the usage is, and you can actually look at some of the trends in the organization to kind of help, just, I guess, inform, is something really trending up and why, and is something trending down? And if that's expected, then that's great. If not, sometimes, you may see something here that you don't expect at all. And so, our goal is really to be able to surface that information for you to be able to have visibility into the environment and the landscape. So with that, I will pause and kind of conclude on the demo and hand back to you for Q&A.
Thank you, Hina. Okay, so we've got a question here. You talk about different personas. Can you elaborate as to the capabilities of ZenOptics users? What can an IT admin do as opposed to a frontline report consumer?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same ZenOptics app, or are there different levels based on the user rights? can my frontline users be separate from my IT users?
Okay, so I, here have logged in as a IT user or, an admin user. And so I see this admin menu option here. And obviously I have a whole host of other features that I as an admin can do. But if I was to log out and log in as just a simple user profile, in this case, one thing is that me coming in as an analyst user can decide, whether I really want to kind of start out with my category experience or my workflow experience. Let's just say in this case, I want to start out with my category experience. My overall view as a frontline user is much simplified because I am now navigated directly into sort of my categories or my workflows, depending on what I choose to kind of get to, and I have that choice. And I can also navigate back to the dashboard. But so that's one level of kind of the persona identification, right? I'm going to log out and log back in as Hina, because what I want to talk about is, even as when I logged in as Hina, I can choose and say that, I'm coming in as an expert user. So really allow me to have this experience that allows me to manage the environment. But outside of that, we have two roles. One is the BI the ZenOptics admin, who will really administer the platform, create the categories, manage, the sort of user onboarding. But there's also the BI steward role. And the BI steward is who will see the BI dictionary here and will use the BI dictionary to really govern and manage the BI terms and definitions that will be automatically brought in through those connectors. So I hope I answered the question, but I can go into more detail if needed.
Okay, another question. Love the ideas of workflows. Can anyone create a workflow? Better yet, can I create a workflow just for my team?
Absolutely. Let me just launch this workflow. This is my standard month and close workflow. Let's say I needed that sales report or another sales report in here that I searched for. Let's just say that I really wanted this Power BI sales scorecard. And I'm going to log in because I think my session timed out. We are single sign-on enabled, but if you're not single sign-on enabled on your tools, you can also still leverage ZenOptics to kind of consolidate that experience. So what I was going to show is, now I can come in here. Me as a user, as an end user, can save this as a new workflow. I can decide that I don't really want to look at all of this information. I just want my new sales scorecard report and a couple of these. I can say next. I can create the workflow here saying RIC Webinar workflow, just as an example. Personal workflow. I can decide if I want to share it now or not. And that goes to the question of, can I create my workflow and share it, or can I just create it for myself? The answer is yes to both. You can, make it shareable and share it with others, or you can just create it for yourself. In this case, let's create this for myself for now, and I save it, right? Now I come back to my dashboard and I should see my, oh, sorry, what happened here? I should be able to see my workflow right here. The RIC webinar workflow is right here. Now I can execute this, and this is my workflow, the one I just created.
Thank you. There's no other questions in the chat. Does anybody want to ask a question verbally? Just unmute yourself. Another question. Can you talk more about the end user who sees a report that they do not have access to? If they request access, is that a workflow?
That is a workflow in a different context of just triggering a IT service management request into kind of that process. But every organization has their own service service request process. So We have customers, so in this example, if I click request for access, some customers like this to integrate just into a email DL where they're managing their requests for access. Others have us integrate directly into ServiceNow, which triggers a request into ServiceNow. So it creates a ticket automatically in ServiceNow, which then follows its own sort of workflow process, right? But not to be confused with the ZenOptics workflow, which is specifically around, really enabling, these business processes that you're now able to consolidate into a grouping to execute as a single click process.
Thank you. Another question, how does ZenOptics governance differ from, let's say, data governance?
Great question. They're complementary. I wouldn't say that, they're independent of each other, but like I mentioned earlier, data governance is a bottom-up approach. It's traditionally a very large undertaking that aims to kind of really consolidate and manage your data from the source all the way up. And you're basically cataloging and managing and governing every single data element. And that's really huge. And it's important to do. However, if you're really starting out on that initiative and you really want to focus in on how to get some quick wins, when you look at report governance or analytics governance that's really enabled through ZenOptics via the BI glossary, you are now able to really focus in on these terms and the BI terms and definitions that people are really using, right? And so you're starting from a top-down approach, and you're using it to inform that overall data governance strategy in a much more effective manner. You can focus in and say, here are the terms and definitions that I really am using based on the reports that they're being used in. And so then I start my entire process from there, and I can integrate into sort of a data catalog that has really or we can feed into that data catalog those terms and definitions that the data governance platform can really help manage.
Thank you. There's no other questions in the feed. I want to open it up a little bit more. Oh, another question. I like the report analytics. If I'm considering moving from one platform to another, can this help? And if so, how?
Another great question. Migration from either legacy BI tools to more mainstream best of breed BI tools, self-service BI tools, or just general migrations from one tool to another. We see a huge benefit in leveraging the ZenOptics platform because you can really drive a better adoption story when you're able to present your users with kind of content from both platforms as they're migrating over. Migrations are never easy. Change management is never easy. People never want to let go of their legacy tools and their legacy BI reports. So helping that journey by providing them, whether it's a workflow, right? You could create a workflow for your content across different tools. We're talking to multiple customers, different migration stories. But if I'm trying to migrate, just as an example, from Tableau to Power BI, right? And in this particular workflow, I have put together my Tableau reports and my Power BI reports. Now I can create a workflow that allows that user to really get comfortable with Power BI before I can decommission Tableau, right? So I'm really allowing them to settle in, and I'm making the change management process very simple, driving adoption to that new platform. Obviously, I'm also able to rationalize the content. I'm able to understand the inventory, using the report statistics. I can kind of look at all the information and kind of come up with the migration scope. And I can also define that migration scope based on, looking at the metadata across those reports that I'm trying to migrate, and make sure that those reports are the new reports account for all the metadata that I need, to migrate over. into the new reports. So just a whole host of advantages in terms of supporting a migration use case.
Any other questions from our team attending today? Okay, what are the ZenOptics project deployment timelines?
All right, a typical installation and deployment is, we kind of look at a 6-week timeline for, about 2 to 3 connectors. Again, the ability to connect using URL is out of the box for any deployment. So it's a very, very quick installation and setup process for your baseline content. And when I say baseline, I'm talking about, your categories and your workflows that you want to start out with. And then, from then on, again, it's about, as the platform evolves and the usage evolves, obviously, and you get more adoption, that's just going to get to become a more richer experience. But truly, you're looking at about a 4 to 6 week deployment timeline, depending on the scope of the number of connectors.
Thank you. There's another question. You speak of metadata. Do you import any other data?
Well, so the metadata that we bring in, and I'm going to go into the BI dictionary since we didn't cover that, but since the question did come up. The metadata is inherited or read in automatically through the connectors. So you can see, when I ran certain connectors, this comes in and says it's an extractor. But I can also add in new metadata directly into ZenOptics by adding in these records manually, or I can import metadata from external systems. Let's say if people are maintaining another external, a metadata catalog, so to speak, or a dictionary that they want to import in, then that can be imported in as well. We don't touch data. So the question, if it's asking about do we bring in any data, the answer is no. But if you look at kind of some of the custom attributes that I was talking about earlier, where we allow you to add in this metadata at the report level outside of the fields, which I showed you through the BI dictionary, you can maintain the business owner, the ZenOptics description, you could add some tags to your reports. So that's what you can do within the platform, but not data specifically.
Another question, and this builds on that question. You say that you can add to the imported metadata. I get that there is no write back, but what you can add to the metadata.
I didn't understand the question clearly, but we can import metadata and then we can enhance it. So let me just show you that as an example. If you can think of, we were using the term revenue, and I may not be answering this exactly. So if I'm not, then I'm happy to go back to it. But in this particular case, this metadata was loaded in through an extractor, but updated and modified through an Excel upload that I can come in and edit. And I can maintain additional information about, like short description, business area, is it same as or derived from, long description, documentation link. Now, there is no write back into a source system, but we are allowing you in the dictionary to really enhance this metadata through the option of maintaining it here. So I hope I answered the question. If not, I can clarify.
And then there was another question around tags.
Okay, what was the question?
No, just ask, can you apply tags for?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, I can come in here and I can add in a sales tag and I can say, okay, this is for sales. And then, it's right there. I can search. So let's say this was customer profitability. I can come in here. Let's just close this out for a second. And I will close this. But yeah, you can search for tags as well, right? So I can come in here and I can say sales, Obviously, this is a search by metadata, but I can also search by tags, and I can see that the customer profitability sample report that I just added the tag to is available here now.
Great. So I'm just watching the time. We've got about 3 minutes left. Just a comment here. Perfect. That answers my question. No write back, but I can update via tags. Perfect. Any other questions? Final round for questions. Nothing. In that case, I'm going to close off our webinar today. I want to thank everybody for attending, and especially the ZenOptics team and Hina for this great presentation and demo. If you have any questions or you would like to discuss how we can, look at your environment, your specific use cases, and add benefit to your deployments, please feel free to reach out to RIC Consulting. We will contact you to discuss your unique cases. Thank you very much, everybody. We hope to see you again in one of our next webinars.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much.